My family abandoned me in a foreign country, but they said it was just a joke. But when they see me again, I'm Bethany Coleman, and I'll never forget the day my family abandoned me in Genoa, Italy, just for a joke. We were on a family trip, and I thought it was a chance to repair our relationship, but they left me in a crowded market. My wallet is empty, my passport is not with me, there is no way to go home. My sister's hoarse voice came from the public phone. Bethany, you are disturbing everyone too much. Mom also stepped in. This is all your fault. They laughed and hung up, leaving me alone in a foreign land. I stood there, my heart beating fast, clutching the useless phone tightly, only to realize that they had planned it all. My own family laughed at me, as if I were an insignificant person. I wasn't just lost, I was betrayed. After a long time, when they saw me again, there stood beside me a man they had never expected, let's say. My father's jaw almost fell to the ground in shock, and his words changed everything completely. Keep looking and find out who that person is. If you have been hurt by your family, click the subscribe button and leave a message below to tell me. If your family did this to you, what would you do? I read every message. I grew up in New York, and in our family, I've always been the misfit. My sister Lindsay, 5 years older than me, was the apple of the eye of the family, graceful and flawless, and had already made her mark at a big bank by the age of 27. Her parents always raved about her. Why can't you learn more from Lindsay? Mom Cheryl always snapped, her voice piercing my heart like a knife, especially when I stayed up late painting. Dad Gary rarely spoke, but his silence was a clear indication of approval. In their eyes, my love for painting was just a childish whim, not a future at all. At the age of 22, I am still searching for myself, but in their eyes, I am a failure, a visionary who does not meet their criteria for success. Our house in Queens, it's like a pressure cooker full of anticipation. Cheryl keeps the house in check and cares only about what the neighbors think of us. She would stare at my paint-stained jeans and whisper, "You're losing us in these rags." At one point, she grabbed my sketchbook and threw it on the counter like trash. "Stop wasting your life on these graffiti," she said. Gary would only nod, deliberately avoiding my gaze. Even if he did, he said vaguely, "Get a real job, Bethany." Lindsay is the most over-the-top one. At family dinners, she would sneer at my paintings. "Bethany, this is cute, but this is not a profession." Everyone would laugh as if my dream were a joke. They're all the same. The school didn't give me much comfort. I studied art at New York University and devoted myself to every canvas, but I always felt out of place among my classmates who were obsessed with high-end gallery internships. In order to afford paint, I worked part-time in a coffee shop and was struggling to get. It was there that I met my then-boyfriend, Eric. He was a business student, full of charm and full of grand plans to enter the business world. At first, he seemed to understand me. We would talk late into the night, talk about my art, and he promised to support me all the time. But when I told him that I wanted to give up graduate school and concentrate on painting, his face changed. "Bethany, you're destroying your future," he said, his voice icy. "What I need is someone with real ambition." With that, he turned and left, leaving me alone to doubt every choice I had made. Eric's betrayal hurt enough, but the family's reaction was even more heart-wrenching. When I told Cheryl about the breakup, she just shrugged. "If you had listened to him, he might not have left," she said, sipping her coffee as if it were just a trivial matter. Lindsay leaned back in her chair and flicked her hair. "Bethany, you're too much, always running after unrealistic fantasies." Gary didn't even look up from the newspaper. In their eyes, I seem to deserve only criticism. Every time the family gets together, it's a reminder of how much I've failed. They would brag about Lindsay's promotion, her exquisite apartment, and her perfect life, and then look at me with sympathy or contempt. "When will you grow up?" At one point, Cheryl asked, her tone full of disappointment. I wanted to refute, but I could only sit there and bite the bullet. I began to avoid family dinners, preferring to hide in the studio. Painting was my refuge, the only place I could feel life, but their voices, Lindsay's taunts, Cheryl's sermons, Gary's silence were everywhere. I tried to prove them wrong and entered a local art competition, But every time I failed, Cheryl would say, "Look, you should have studied a practical major in the first place." This word's like a needle in my heart, but I still did not give up painting, hope that one day they can see my value. I thought the family trip to Genoa might be a chance to prove to them that I was not a loser in their eyes. I was dead wrong. A family trip to Genoa, Italy, was supposed to be a respite from it all. I took my sketchbook and couldn't wait to paint the city's old ports and narrow streets, thinking that a new environment might improve our relationship. But from the moment we stepped off the plane, Lindsay made it clear that she didn't want to improve her relationship with me at all. "Why are you always so slow?" On the first morning of the trip, she snapped, staring at me who was stopping to depict a dilapidated stone arch. Cheryl was no better. "Hurry up, Bethany." She hurried past me, as if I were just trouble. Gary followed, his face sullen, and when I asked him for support, he just shrugged. We had planned to spend a week in Genoa to explore the city, but the journey quickly turned into a place for them to vent their grievances. Lindsay took the lead in picking on my thorns and was critical of everything I did. In a cafe near the port, I tried to order an Italian meal and stammered unintelligibly, and she burst out laughing so loudly that she caught everyone's eyes. "You've humiliated us," she said, drinking her espresso proudly. My mother nodded, and her eyes were stern. "Be good, and don't let people see that you don't belong here." Dad was still silent, stirring the coffee, deliberately avoiding my eyes. I forced a smile and suggested visiting the local art gallery, hoping they would accommodate me a little. But Lindsay immediately refused. "No one wants to waste time on your artistic nonsense." Cheryl interrupted me with a wave and took us to a shopping street. By the third day, I was exhausted by their endless taunts. We were in a crowded bazaar in the old town of Genoa, surrounded by stalls filled with spices and handicrafts. I was drawing a peddler's stall when Lindsay suddenly pulled me aside. "The bus to the next stop leaves at noon," she said in a stiff tone. "Don't screw it up." I looked at my watch, 11:30, and quickly packed my things. But when I got to the bus stop, it was empty. My heart sank, and I looked around, hoping to see them. When my phone rang, it was Lindsay. "We are already in the car," she said, her tone full of pride. "You're too slow." I hear Cheryl laughing in the background. "Do something about it yourself." Gary's chuckling also faintly came. "Just a little joke." Lindsay finished, and the phone hung up. I stood there, my hands trembling and holding the phone. The hustle and bustle of the market faded away, leaving only my own rapid heartbeat in my ears. I reached for my wallet. It was empty, not even €1. My passport was in Cheryl's bag and had already left with them. They have long been planning to abandon me in a foreign country and take pleasure in it. I dialed Lindsay's phone again, and his voice was shaking. "Why are you doing this?" She didn't even bother to pretend to care. "Maybe then you won't be dragging us down." She said words as sharp as a knife. The phone hung up, but their laughter has been echoing in my mind. I was alone, abandoned, humiliated. I was pacing up and down the market, my mind in a muddle. For a moment, I wanted to catch up and beg them to come back. I could almost hear Lindsay's proud voice, Cheryl's disdain, and Gary's silence. But another emotion came to mind, a hint of anger, a hint of defiance. I've spent too much time seeking their approval for nothing but ridicule. Standing in that chaotic marketplace, I realized that I didn't have to play by their rules anymore. This perception will shape everything I have since. I chose to stay in Genoa. This is not only to refuse to bow to my family, but also to prove that I can make a fortune on my own. With only a sketchbook and an indomitable tenacity around me, I am determined to fight my own life in this strange city and pin all my hopes on my art. The first thing to solve is the residence. I had no money, no passport, only a backpack with clothes and pencils. Wandering the narrow streets, I finally found a humble youth hostel near the port of Genoa. The proprietress, an old woman named Maria, noticed my tattered jacket and tired eyes. "Do you need any help?" she asked, her voice hoarse but gentle. I didn't tell her about Lindsay, Cheryl, and Gary, only that I was stuck here and could paint. I offered to paint a portrait of her for a night's stay. She nodded, and I spent hours painting her wrinkled face, each stroke a small defiance. The The painting earned me a shabby bed and allowed me to spend the night. In order to survive, I must earn money as soon as possible. Maria agreed to let me stay longer on the condition that I help clean the room, scrubbing the sink and sweeping the floor in exchange for a few euros. Although this job is hard, it at least gives me a place to shelter from the wind and rain and gives me time to think about what to do next. During my break, I went to the streets to paint pictures of Genoa's colorful docks and bustling squares. Visitors would stop and some would drop coins into my pencil case. These coins were enough for me to buy bread and cheap coffee and barely make ends meet. I ignored the ringing of my cell phone. Lindsay and Cheryl must be calling, probably thinking I would cry and beg them to buy me a ticket home. I didn't pick up. They didn't leave me anything I'm going to show them, and I don't need anything from them. Breaking into Genoa's art scene is not easy. The city is talented, and I'm just a nobody with no background. I spent days introducing myself to cafes and small galleries, offering to paint murals or sell sketches for them. Most of the time, I was shut out, but one cafe owner, Luca, gave me a chance. He wanted to paint a mural of the Lagora coast on the wall of the shop. Hurry up and finish the painting. He gave me a suspicious look and said, I painted all night long. My hands cramped from clutching my brush, blending blue and gold paint, until the waves on the wall came to life. At dawn, Luca handed me 50 euros, a hint of softness on his serious face. Child, you're very talented. This money is like a lifesaver. I moved into a cheaper place, a cramped room shared with two women who barely spoke English. The walls are patchy, the sink is leaking, but this is where I belong. I spent every penny carefully, living on macaroni and fruit bought at the market, while insisting on painting. After the youth hostel work, I concentrated more on sketching, painting portraits of tourists in the square on weekends. Every transaction, even if it is only a few euros, is a victory and a cornerstone of my new life. At night, doubts always creep in. I was lying on a thin mattress, staring at a sketchbook, with Cheryl's words echoing in my ear. You're wasting your life. Lindsay's quip. You're not really an artist at all. And there was Garrier's heavier silence than words. I put these thoughts aside and forced myself to pick up the brush every morning. A few weeks later, I found the rhythm, painting murals for small shops, selling sketches on weekends, and trading paintings for food when I had no money. The streets of Genoa, which at first frightened me, then gradually felt at home. I learned to bargain with vendors, learned to walk through the maze of the city, and learned to live my own way. I'm not just scraping by, I'm creating something real, something of my own. Life in Genoa is gradually on track. One afternoon I was painting in the sunny square when I met Tyler Reed. He is a street artist, with chalk dust on his hands, creating a brightly colored mural on the cobblestone floor. The picture is turbulent waves. As I watched him paint, he blended the intense red and blue and glanced at my sketchbook without looking up. Nice lines. I whispered thanks, surprised by his American accent. He told me he was from Chicago and had been living in Genoa for 2 years, earning a living from art. The calm confidence in him made me unable to stop talking to him. Taylor was different from everyone I met. He didn't just paint, he put his whole person into it, open and free. When I showed him my sketches, he wasn't perfunctory. You're talented, he said, pointing to a painting of a harbor, but you're binding your hands and being a little bolder. His directness stung me a little, but not as hurtful as Lindsay's mockery or Cheryl's belittling, which was sincere, hoping I'd get better advice. He invited me to join him at the local street art fair, where artists would sell their works to tourists. You can make a lot of money. He threw me a spare chalk. I hesitated, but was infected by his smile and agreed. The bazaar was full of color and noise, and Taylor introduced me to other artists, a close-knit group who shared tools and each other's tricks. He helped me set up a small booth to show my sketches of the old town of Genoa. When a tourist offered to buy a portrait for 10 euros, Taylor nudged me with his elbow. More points, he whispered. Your work deserves a higher price. By the end of the day, I had sold 5 sketches and made enough money to pay for a week's meals. It's not a huge amount of money, but it inspires me. Tyler high-fived me, laughing and saying, I'll just say it. Over the next few weeks, Tyler became my friend. He took me to the best places to paint, the dilapidated arches hidden in the alleys, the docks with the right light. He also put me in touch with a bar owner who needed someone to paint a mural for the terrace. Bethany can do it. Tyler patted me on the shoulder and said to him. I took the job, spent 3 days painting the spreading vine pattern, and earned €100. Taylor not only opened doors for me, but also encouraged me to believe in my abilities. To be a good person, you don't need anyone's permission. One night, we were drinking cheap red wine, he said to me. This sentence echoed in my ears for a long time, overshadowing my mother's sermons and Lindsay's sarcasm. Life in Genoa is still challenging. I don't speak the language and always stumble when communicating with the locals. The small room I live in has a creaking floor and thin walls that are far from home. But Tyler's presence made everything easier. We would paint together in the evening and share each other's life stories. He left Chicago because of a falling out with his family, giving up the life they expected and pursuing their artistic dreams. You are not alone. He spoke firmly to me. It was the first time I felt like I was being truly seen not as a loser, but as a person with potential. I began to stand firm. The work of bar murals brought me new orders, and I drew the pattern of Genoa Lighthouse for a storefront. I learned to bargain for painting materials and hawkers, and can travel through the streets of the city without maps. My sketches sold faster and faster in the market, and I was inspired by Taylor's fearless style and began to experiment with bolder colors. Genoa was no longer just a place for me to live. It became a place for me to reinvent myself. Taylor's friendship was a turning point for me. Not only did he help me get a job, but he also showed me that I could build my own life. And my life is about to take an unexpected leap. My art has finally gained a foothold in Genoa. At Taylor's urging, I submitted sketches for an art festival at the local palace, which featured charcoal sketches of Genoa alleys and fishermen. I stood nervously beside the booth when a woman in a neat suit stopped to praise Elena, the curator of a well-known gallery. She sent me a piece to talk about it in detail, and this conversation completely changed everything. She invited 5 of my big works to participate in the upcoming group exhibition, saying that my perspective was novel. It was my first major break from the street artist label, and I walked out of the gallery clutching Elena's contract, ecstatic. Not only was Taylor a friend, he became my partner in the art world. He has exhibition experience, helped me organize my portfolio, set prices, and firmly encouraged me when I doubted myself. The opening scene of the group exhibition was very lively, and my paintings attracted much attention because of their hard lines and strong shadows. Elena introduced me to collectors. The 3 works sold for far more than my monthly income that night. The local art magazine critic also offered an exclusive interview, saying that I was a new star worthy of attention. Taylor and I got together to celebrate. The gallery said it wanted to collect more works. Elena also hinted that if the sales volume was good, she would hold a personal exhibition for me. Taylor offered to help me deal with the schedule, contracts, and other logistics so that I could concentrate on my creation. We are partners now. This warmth made me know that I am no longer a girl struggling to survive, but an artist with a future. The Genoa Art Circle accepted me, but there are still challenges ahead. 5 years later, my life ushered in a new chapter. I returned to New York to hold my first major solo exhibition, featuring canvas paintings depicting Genoa's coastline and streets. Taylor, who is already a well-known artist, is by my side, helping me greet the crowd and answer questions. His presence makes me feel at ease. The exhibition was a huge success, and the drawings I painted on the streets of Genoa are now being bid by collectors. Thousands of euros scrambled, and sales were astonishing. An art magazine critic praised my work as powerful and straightforward, and took close-ups of me. Tyler complimented me softly, and years of struggle evaporated at the moment. I was no longer the abandoned girl, but the budding artist Bethany Coleman. That's when I saw Lindsay, Cheryl, and Gary pushing their way through the crowd. My stomach crumbled. I'd been cut off from them since Genoa was abandoned and never answered their calls or messages. Lindsay came forward with a fake smile on her face and said, "Bethany, we're so proud of you." Cheryl clutched her purse and scanned the gallery uneasily. "We made a mistake and wanted you back in our lives." Gary nodded deadpan. "Let's put the past down." Their words were deliberate and empty, but their eyes were glued to the sold sign next to my painting. I saw through it that they didn't come to apologize at all, but coveted my success. Lindsay swept the price tag, her mouth twitching unconsciously. Cheryl, on the other hand, frequently mentioned New York family connections, hinting that she would introduce me to the dignitaries. When Gary caught a glimpse of Taylor, who was talking and laughing with the collector, his eyes were sharp. "Isn't that Taylor Reed?" he suddenly shouted, drawing the attention of the audience. "You are cooperating with him?" Tyler stepped forward calmly. "What's the problem, sir?" Gary blushed and snapped. "You're the street artist? You really think you're better than us?" Lindsay hurriedly pulled him, but was thrown away. He turned to scold me angrily. "Bethany, you abandoned us for this guy and forgot our kindness to you?" I was shocked and angry. They were just people who abandoned me in a foreign country and watched my struggle with cold eyes. Tyler pressed my shoulder and said, "You don't owe them anything." I looked straight at my family, with a calm but firm tone. "You are not qualified to steal my success. I started all this from scratch." Lindsay's smile froze for a moment. Cheryl's face was tight, and Gary wanted to retort, but he flinched in embarrassment under the gaze of the crowd, muttering, "You'll regret it," and turning away, followed by Lindsay and Cheryl. After they left, the air was much lighter. Tyler motioned me to focus in front of me, and I took a deep breath and re-engaged in communication with the collector. My paintings were almost sold out that night, and a curator extended me an invitation to a European tour. I came back to New York not to regain the past, but to prove that I had already surpassed the past. This night, I drew a complete end to my life. After the New York exhibition, I returned to my studio, a sunny loft overlooking the Hudson River. Tyler and I sat down and combed through everything that had happened. The confrontation with Lindsay, Cheryl, and Gary is still fresh in my mind, but we all agree that they don't deserve to be in my life. Their fake apologies in the gallery were nothing more than trying to capitalize on my success again. Taylor, who is now the backbone of the art world, said bluntly, "They are not your family," he said firmly. "Family will not drag you down." I nodded, as if the burden of the heart suddenly off. I don't need their forgiveness, nor do I need their approval. I have built my world on my own. Soon after, Lindsay's reputation plummeted. Her actions spread through New York's tightly knit art scene, and her vitriol and manipulative tactics have long been no secret. Several gallery owners who heard her mocking words at the exhibition began to spread the news, and when it came to light that she had abandoned me in Genoa, the socialites who had been attracted to her also alienated her. Her carefully crafted image of the perfect daughter and upper class has completely collapsed. She called me once and said, "You ruined my life." She blamed me for her downfall. I hung up the phone. There was no wave in my heart. Her malevolence finally attacked me, and I was not responsible for her consequences. Cheryl and Gary have also tasted the bitter fruit. The social circle, once supported by Lindsay's connections, has shrunk as people have drifted away. My mother tried to contact me by email, reading between the lines of guilt. "We can still be a family," she wrote, but it seemed empty. Gary sent a text message, "You owe us an apology." I couldn't help laughing. They abandoned me to fend for myself in a foreign land and now expect me to grovel? I hacked their numbers and cut off the last trace of contact. Their isolation is to blame. I spent years chasing their approval, and now I realize that it was just a trap for me to draw a prison. It's a lesson that I will always remember. Relying on yourself and believing in your own worth is far more important than getting the approval of a family that will only wear you down. I started from scratch in Genoa and survived by sketching and indomitable tenacity. This experience made me fully understand this truth. Taylor's support showed me a real bond, not conditional, not calculated, but based on mutual respect. My art, once my lifeline, is now my voice, telling stories of resilience and defiance. I am no longer just an artist. I am the one who broke free of a toxic past and chose to live for myself. Standing in the studio, looking at the unfinished canvases, I felt an unprecedented freedom. My work is becoming more and more popular. Galleries in Paris and Berlin have extended invitations to me. A solo exhibition next spring is also on the agenda. Taylor and I plan a joint exhibition that blends our styles and tells a story of courage and triumph. I've built my own life and am no longer swayed by Lindsay's taunts, Cheryl's preaching, or Gary's fury. I have already walked out of their shadows and won the attention of the world. Now, I want to hear your story. Have you ever had to stay away from your family full of negative energy in order to find your own way? What does that tell you? Share your thoughts, your story. I am listening. Because sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set you free. To their approval, I have built my own world. Soon after, Lindsay's reputation plummeted. Her actions spread through New York's tightly knit art scene, and her vitriol and manipulative tactics have long been no secret. Several gallery owners who heard her mocking words at the exhibition began to spread the news, and when it came to light that she had abandoned me in Genoa, the social celebrities who had been attracted to her also alienated her. Her carefully crafted image of the perfect daughter and upper class has completely collapsed. She called me once and said, "You ruined my life." She blamed me for her downfall. I hung up the phone. There was no wave in my heart. Her malevolence finally attacked me, and I was not responsible for her consequences. Cheryl and Gary have also tasted the bitter fruit. The social circle, once supported by Lindsay's connections, has shrunk as people have drifted away. My mother tried to contact me by email, with guilt between the lines. "We can still be a family," she wrote, but it seemed empty. Gary sent a text message, "You owe us an apology." I couldn't help laughing. They abandoned me to fend for myself in a foreign land and now expect me to grovel? I hacked their numbers and cut off the last trace of contact. Their isolation is to blame. I spent years chasing their approval, and now I realize that it was just a trap for me to draw a prison. It's a lesson that I will always remember. Relying on yourself and believing in your own worth is far more important than getting the approval of a family that will only wear you down. I started from scratch in Genoa and survived by sketching and indomitable tenacity. This experience made me fully understand this truth. Taylor's support showed me a real bond, not conditional, not calculated, but based on mutual respect. My art, once my lifeline, is now my voice, telling stories of resilience and defiance. I am no longer just an artist. I am the one who broke free of a toxic past and chose to live for myself. Standing in the studio, looking at the unfinished canvases, I felt an unprecedented freedom. My work is becoming more and more popular. Galleries in Paris and Berlin have extended invitations to me. A solo exhibition next spring is also on the agenda. Taylor and I plan a joint exhibition that blends our styles and tells a story of courage and triumph. I've built my own life and am no longer swayed by Lindsay's taunts, Cheryl's preaching, or Gary's fury. I have already walked out of their shadows and won the attention of the world. Now, I want to hear your story. Have you ever had to stay away from your family full of negative energy in order to find your own way? What does that tell you? Share your thoughts, your story. I am listening. Because sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set you free. To their approval, I have built my own world. Soon after, Lindsay's reputation plummeted. Her actions spread through New York's tightly knit art scene, and her vitriol and manipulative tactics have long been no secret. Several gallery owners who heard her mocking words at the exhibition began to spread the news, and when it came to light that she had abandoned me in Genoa, the socialites who had been attracted to her also alienated her. Her carefully crafted image of the perfect daughter and upper class has completely collapsed. She called me once and said, "You ruined my life." She blamed me for her downfall. I hung up the phone. There was no wave in my heart. Her malevolence finally attacked me, and I was not responsible for her consequences. Cheryl and Gary have also tasted the bitter fruit. The social circle, once supported by Lindsay's connections, has shrunk as people have drifted away. My mother tried to contact me by email, reading between the lines of guilt. "We can still be a family," she writes, but it seems very empty. Gary sent a text message, "You owe us an apology." I couldn't help laughing. They abandoned me to fend for myself in a foreign land and now expect me to grovel? I hacked their numbers and cut off the last trace of contact. Their isolation is to blame. I spent years chasing their approval, and now I realize that it was just a trap for me to draw a prison. It's a lesson that I will always remember. Relying on yourself and believing in your own worth is far more important than getting the approval of a family that will only wear you down. I started from scratch in Genoa and survived by sketching and indomitable tenacity. This experience made me fully understand this truth. Taylor's support showed me a real bond, not conditional, not calculated, but based on mutual respect. My art, once my lifeline, is now my voice, telling stories of resilience and resistance. I am no longer just an artist. I am the one who broke free of a toxic past and chose to live for myself. Standing in the studio, looking at the unfinished canvases, I felt an unprecedented freedom. My work is becoming more and more popular. Galleries in Paris and Berlin have extended invitations to me. A solo exhibition next spring is also on the agenda. Taylor and I plan a joint exhibition that blends our styles and tells a story of courage and triumph. I've built my own life and am no longer swayed by Lindsay's taunts, Cheryl's preaching, or Gary's fury. I have already walked out of their shadows and won the attention of the world. Now, I want to hear your story. Have you ever had to stay away from your family full of negative energy in order to find your own way? What does that tell you? Share your thoughts, your story. I'm listening. Because sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that set you free.